In part one of our pond management series, land specialist Sean Malloy walked us through how to evaluate an unmanaged pond. In this video, part two, he's going to walk us through what a well-managed pond looks like while still addressing areas for improvement.
Mossy Properties. We're outdoorsmen. Find their favorite place.
All right, Sean, in part one, I know it was for me, hopefully it was for the viewer, was an incredible learning experience.
Good.
We took a look at an unmanaged pond and you told us how to evaluate it, what issues to look for. We're at a different location today on a pond that you have described to me as well managed, that we're going to evaluate, do the same thing. However, there are some issues that are room for improvement.
Room for improvement, for sure.
Absolutely.
And we're going to take a look at some of those. Even though this is a well-managed pond, it's not perfectly managed. This isn't a golf course. This is actually a private pond. And we're going to look at some of the things that we looked at the previous pond, but also some things that could be improved here that could cause issues for the landowner. And these issues can affect the usability of the pond and also the sale or resale of the property. And even though things look pristine from the first glance, buyers need to be aware that you still need to take the time to look at some of the things that we look for at the other pond, and we're going to do that on this one today.
Okay, that's a good point. As you mentioned in the first video, a pond is like any habitat type. It needs to be managed, and while this one is in better shape than the first one, if we don't do the necessary management steps,
that's right.
As you said, Mother Nature will manage it for us.
Mother Nature will manage it.
I'm looking forward to seeing what a pond that to me looks pristine. I'm looking forward to learning how we can improve it even further.
Well, good. Well, let's get started.
All right.
Cody, we hadn't even gone 50 yards on the bank of this pond, and I'm already seeing signs of things that we were looking for on the other pond, and that's of critters like otter, and in this case beaver. We've got signs of beaver gnawing on these banks. Not only do we have stumps that are left by the beaver, we've got chunks of wood that where they've taken these trees, bent them over and gnawed on them. So even on this type of pond, those types of animals are going to find their way here, and so we want to be aware of that they are here, and we need to see if they're doing any damage to the pond dam or to trees and stuff that we don't want them doing damage to. So as we walk around, we're going to take a look and see if there's any real concerns and of the amount of beaver activity that we have on this pond. Now, Cody, we were just looking literally right here beside the trail here beside the pond, and I looked over here in the water and started noticing some debris in the water, and some of it is green. This didn't fall into the water from a recent storm. This is where beavers have chewed trees down and have dragged branches into the pond. And in this area right here, there's quite a bit of debris, and that is indicative of them perhaps starting to build a lodge by putting the foundation, if you will, into the water. So it's another indicator that we've got active beaver activity going on. And also this debris can clutter up things. We already talked about spillway, right? You remember the spillway and how debris can get up there and block and dam a spillway, which causes issues like we saw on the other pond. Well, this type of debris could float, move its way down to the spillway, which we're going to check out in a few minutes, and it could dam it up and cause issues with the dam. So little indicators like this you don't want to overlook. So sometimes you can see things on the banks, but if you look in the water you can also find stuff. So it'll be interesting to see what else we find as we walk around. Hey Cody, we're on the dam now, and want to take a moment and talk about drainage. You know, the other pond we were at did not have a main drainage pipe, it just had the spillway. And this one does have a drain pipe, but if you look at it, it's not necessarily the best solution for this type of pond. And if you look at this pile of debris, this debris has come out of that pipe at some point, and that debris either got there by stuff floating in the pond and going into the drain pipe and getting stuck, or the beaver in some cases will come and try to clog that pipe up and do it deliberately. I suspect that that both of those things have happened. When the beaver put debris into a pond, not all of it's going to sink to the bottom. It's going to float, and of course it's going to follow the flow of water. It's going to find its way to this pipe. It's going to be too big for it. It's going to clog it up, and this could cause issues for the landowner. Unlike the other property we were at where the pond water was almost cresting the dam, we don't really have that worry here, but it could affect the dam itself over time. So my solution to this would be perhaps relook and revisit this pipe and look at a different solution for drainage of a drain pipe. Also, when we look at the banks here, remember on the other property we had some nutria that had dug into the banks, and there's evidence here of that occurring, and the landowner has taken action. I do know that this landowner has trapped and removed these critters as they come, and then they've tried to fill this in with rock, and it's evident too right here. If you look, remember on the other dam we had nutria that were burrowing into the dam, and so they were able to stop this burrowing and then put rocks in here to try to prevent other critters from coming and digging into the same hole. So these are things, again, that when we're evaluating our ponds and dams that we need to be looking for and make sure that we understand what's happening so that we can make better decisions on buying a property or managing our own property with a pond. So we're going to go to the spillway next and check out how that looks. So let's head on over there. Well, Cody, here we are at the spillway, and as you can see, we have a similar problem that we had on the unmanaged pond that we have on the highly managed pond. So what we have is debris, sticks, and pine cones and mud even have floated down here, and then the sticks have held any sediment and has created a little dam. And this dam is preventing water from spilling down the spillway as designed. And if you look back over there to your right, you can see where it has actually gone around this little dam, and that could cause erosion issues affecting the dam. So again, my solution to spillways is trench it out, pack it, put some of that big stone in here, and then manage it and keep debris off of it so that it doesn't get like this. It's not a hard task. You can do it with a tractor, you can do it with hand tools even, but it's something that has to be done and has to be managed, or it's going to cause issues with erosion or with your dam, and it could affect the whole pond depending on how high the water rises across the pond. But even on this nice property here and this nice pond, there are still ways to improve it, and that's what we're at here to look at. Cody, we talked about vegetation on the dam on the last pond we were on, and as you can see behind me, there's hardly any vegetation on this dam, so it makes it easy to manage, makes it safe to manage. But we do have one tree right here beside of us. It's a big sweet gum tree, and it is big. It is on the inside, so it's drinking a lot of water. Its roots are probably going into the dam, and at some point when this tree does die, because they all will, or a storm pushes it over, it could create an issue. So although the rest of the dam is clean, I don't like to see trees at all, especially on the inside of a dam, and I would recommend that this tree be dealt with in the future. There's no real concern as it stands, but we could get a windstorm and it push right over and rip all this dirt out. Water flows in, next thing you know we got a breach in a dam. So it is of concern to me, and I would want to deal with it. Well, Cody, we've seen beaver sign. Now we actually have a beaver on site, and perfect timing too, because beavers have to live somewhere, and they live in a lodge that they build, and right here is that beaver's lodge. And as you just saw in the video where he splashed at us and slapped the water, he was not happy that we were near his home. These beaver lodges can be found on the banks of ponds and on the banks of lakes. They don't have to be damming up water to have a lodge. And so all those trees and stuff that this beaver's been taking down, they eat part of it, but they also bring it back here for the lodge. But like we spoke about, it does create issues with debris in the water and spillway issues and drain issues. Not to mention that you got a little critter running around here that's, you know, gnawing down some of your trees that you might not want them to gnaw down. So there's really no right or wrong answer about how you want to manage your property. Some people see these beavers as something cool to have, and they let them live in peace and harmony with them, and they don't mind cleaning up after them. And I think that's kind of the way this landowner is. They like having that wildlife here, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's each person's personal land ownership goals and pond management goals that they have to decide what's important to them. And again, it's your decision, it's not mine. It's totally up to you how you want to manage them. And in this case, it is kind of cool, especially in North Carolina, to see a beaver swimming around in a pond and seeing his lodge here. It's really not hurting anything, and knowing that I've just got to do a little bit of maintenance to make sure he doesn't screw things up for me. So, but this is where he lives for the time being, and this is what a beaver lodge looks like if you've never seen one. All right, Cody, we're still making our round around the pond here, and we just came across a fresh gnawed on tree that has fallen into the water, and it gets back to that theme of debris in the water and the destruction that can be caused by one beaver. We've seen one, there may be many. This tree will not stay here. This tree will be taken off of the bank and pulled into this pond. Part of it will be used by the beaver, other parts of it may float and again affect our spillway or our drain. Other ways that trees get into pond is via storms. And if we come over here and look at this tree, there's two trees right here that fell together in a storm, and you can tell that, you know, the owner has come and sawed them and left them in the water. And when those things went in the water, they probably had limbs and leaves on them. And this does, there's a pros and cons of this. The con is you now got something obstructive in your water. So if you look out there, it's sticking up out of the water. If you were wanting to ride a boat around here, it could create a hazard if your pond or lake was big enough for that. You could get snagged on it if you were swimming, but the thing that is a pro about it, it creates habitat for fish, small fish and medium-sized fish. And it gives turtles place to come up and sun themselves. And if you're a nature lover, having a little bit of wild side on your pond, so to speak, can go a long way for you to see wildlife that you wouldn't see if this wasn't in the water. So again, it gets back to how you want to manage your pond based upon your personal goals. And there's no right or wrong answer, but you need to know the risk involved of leaving this in the water as is instead of dragging it out when it fell. Or in the case of the beaver, knowing that they're pulling wood into your dam, or excuse me, into your pond, and it could affect your dam and spillway. But these are things you have to weigh as a landowner. But they are also things, if you're looking at buying property, things you need to consider that you're willing to live with, or you're going to have to manage it. Cody, we're about done with a tour of this beautiful pond, and we found a few things that we need to be aware of and consider when evaluating it. And the last thing I want to touch on is the source of the water, and that's important for any pond, whether it's like the one we left earlier. That was spring fed, but we could not see the spring. This pond is spring fed as well, but the source of the spring is further back up into this draw, and you could find the source. It's on the neighbor's property, but it does flow, and it flows into the pond. When I'm looking at this type of source, it's almost like a creek, and we do have a beaver on the property. So a beaver might want to come down here and try to build a dam and put his lodge in here and create his own little pond or lake behind here. So this is an area we want to protect from the beaver. If the beaver were to do that, it could create some issues with this pond and also possible erosion issues around the sides of that beaver dam, because water is going to flow through it and around it. The other thing about the beaver, and I'm looking at this source of water, is if we don't manage the water flow out of the pond, and we've already talked about the drain pipe and the spillway, the pond could back up, and if those things aren't drained properly, this could actually flood back here, and if it crested the banks, it could actually pull more debris into the pond, which would just compound the issue. You're putting more debris into the pond itself, you're clogging up your drain pipe, and giving it more stuff to get clogged up in there, and you have the potential of blocking your spillway again. So this is another area that you want to look at with this type of flow. The previous pond, the spring fed from underground, so we couldn't see it, and that really wasn't an issue on that property. But when you have a stream, a creek, a spring that feeds like this, it's got a flow, there are other things that you need to look at and consider when evaluating the pond. Because again, as we've said many times, if you don't manage it, Mother Nature will. And this is something that's easily managed. You just got to keep an eye on it, take the time to manage it, and you'll get many, many years of happiness, fun, and joy out of your pond with your friends and family. Well, Cody, we finished up our tour of this beautiful managed pond, but as you saw, we still had some things to be aware of and consider.
Right.
What were your takeaways?
Exactly that. I mean, when we came to this pond, I mean, you and I both commented like how beautiful it looks, how pristine. I mean, it is just a beautiful area, and as you mentioned, this is a well-managed pond, so I came to this spot with that expectation. And you know, when you visit a spot with that in mind, you're not really looking for things to go wrong. But I mean, you and I toured, we took a walk around the entire circumference of the pond, and you were able to point out different things. But what was cool to me was how one problem, like we talked about at the end, how the source and the spillway, everything is connected to each other. I mean, you know, if the spillway isn't functioning properly, it could affect the source and the inverse, you know, of that as well. So it's cool how, to me, a pond is its own ecosystem.
It is.
And it's got to be firing on all cylinders to really optimize itself.
And if it's doing all those things, you're going to get far more enjoyment out of it.
Exactly.
And managing habitat, whether it's timber, old fields, and ponds, it becomes a labor of love, and you can see the results by the way the animals, insects, reptiles, and birds respond to what you do. And I just love that part of habitat management.
Right.
You know, we've contrasted two ponds on two different spectrums today, and I hope everybody got some takeaways. I saw some things today that I didn't pick up on the first one, on my first visit to that first one months ago. So you're always looking for ways to improve, and we've seen, even on this type of property here, there's still room for improvement.
Right.
But it boils down to what the landowner goals are and what level of management they want to do. And as I said earlier, there's no right or wrong answer. It's really up to you how you want to manage it. But if you're buying a property that has a pond, I hope you take away some tips and things to look at. And if you're ever unsure, you can always reach out to our team.
Right.
And any of us with the Mossy Oak Properties land specialist group will be more than happy to give you some advice and maybe help tour property and help you evaluate it. But what's your big takeaway about Mother Nature today there?
I mean, you said it best in the very first video. A pond is like anything else. If left unmanaged, then Mother Nature's going to manage it for you. And a pond, as I learned today from you, is a perfect example of that. I mean, if we were to just walk away from this and just let Mother Nature do its thing, it would look drastically different. A pond is absolutely something you have to, and like as you mentioned, I think that's a really cool point. You know, for different landowners, my goals are different than yours. Right. I might prioritize wildlife. You might prioritize recreation. You can enjoy it, you know, however you best see fit, but you gotta be active.
You still got to manage it either way.
Yeah.
Either way. And there are several resources available to you, not just in our neck of the woods in North Carolina, but across the other states. If you're watching this from outside of our state, our North Carolina Wildlife Resource Commission has a pond management division, and they offer a lot of free information on their website. And they also do pond assessments for landowners, and that's good. There are some for-hire companies that can do pond management for you, and they can do everything from sonar buoying and making a 3D layout of your pond to get depth, to helping you stock fish, to getting pH right if you're trying to grow and have certain types of fish in your pond. So there are an abundance of resources out there. Some of it doesn't cost you anything. It just depends on how you want to manage your pond.
Right.
But there are people that offer extensive pond management services for a landowner. So I hope this has been beneficial for you. It's been great for me. Glad we got to see the beaver out here.
Absolutely.
And it made for a good afternoon and a way to end the day.
Absolutely. It was a highlight for me seeing the beaver. I mean, I learned a ton from you, and I'm sure the viewers did as well.
Well, thanks for coming out, and thank you for watching, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode.
Mossy Properties. We're outdoorsmen. Find their favorite place.